My name is Shirley Worley, and I was 29 years old the night the truth finally surfaced. Not with shouting, not with accusations, but with a single sound, a soft, cheerful ping. It cut through the quiet of our bedroom like a scalpel. I didn't look at first. Thomas's phone was on my nightstand, charging the way it always did when he showered. A tiny domestic courtesy I'd done unthinkingly, plugging it in for him, straightening the cord, placing its screen up in case he needed to see something. I'd treated it like an extension of him, harmless, familiar, safe. But that ping wasn't his mother checking in or a random group message. The flash of orange and white on the dark screen was unmistakable, even before I focused my eyes on the words. New match. Hey Thomas, are you free this weekend? The message glowed like a blade held to my throat. For a moment, the world shrank to the size of that glowing rectangle. My heart didn't sink, it froze, completely still, as if my body went into a kind of emotional shock. I could hear the shower running in the background, steady and calm, like it belonged in someone else's home. A whole year. That's how long he and I had been together. A year of shared mornings and late-night plans, and the kind of small routines that make you think you're building something real. And suddenly a single Tinder notification iced over all of it. My mind went straight back to the night we'd made the commitment, that terrible wine bar with sticky floors and dim lights that made everyone look slightly better than they were. I remembered swirling a cheap glass of Cabernet, my hand woven with his, and saying lightly, I think it's time. The great app purge. He'd laughed, God, that laugh. Warm, magnetic, a little reckless. Absolutely, he'd said, pulling out his phone dramatically. It's official. We're off the market. He'd wiggled his fingers, tapped the delete button, and held the screen out like a trophy. See gone. All yours. And I'd believed him. I deleted mine too, thinking it meant something. Thinking it was a promise, not a performance. A milestone you couldn't undo with a shrug. Now the bathroom door opened, steam rolling out in soft white waves. Thomas walked in, wearing only a towel around his waist, his hair dripping, smelling like peppermint shampoo, and the version of him I still thought existed. You're still up, he asked casually, going to his dresser. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just held up the phone with the notification, bright as a wound. His eyes skimmed the screen, and instead of guilt or fear, or even a flicker of remorse, his expression shifted into annoyance. He swiped the notification away with the same energy someone uses to dismiss spam mail. Then he dropped the phone onto the bed like he was done with an inconvenient chore. What's going on, Shirley? He asked, irritated, as if I had disrupted his peace. My voice came out low, steady, far calmer than the tremor running through my ribs. I thought we deleted those together. He sighed, loud, exaggerated, dismissive. The kind of sigh people give teenagers when they ask why life isn't fair. God, Shirley! Why were you even looking at my phone? That's so invasive. It lit up, I said. I wasn't snooping. I'm asking you directly. He didn't look at me as he rubbed lotion on his arms. Relax. It's not a big deal. The words hit like a second betrayal. Not a big deal. Seeing his active matches wasn't a big deal. The life we were supposedly building together wasn't a big deal. It's just for fun, he continued. Just to see what's out there. It doesn't mean anything. I stared at him, trying to understand how he could say something so empty, so selfish, so stupid. Everything I'd given him late nights, helping him through work stress, listening to his fears about the future, staying up when he got sick. Loving him through every messy moment apparently meant less to him than the validation of a stranger swiping right. So I said quietly, you're not going to delete it? He shrugged. No, I'm not deleting my dating apps. We're not married, Shirley. I can do what I want. The room seemed to grow smaller, the air thinner. Those words were so precise, so intentional. He wasn't just defending himself. He was staking a claim on emotional separation. We're not married. I can do what I want. It was like watching a bridge burn in slow motion. Something inside me stilled, not broken, not shattered, but sharpened. A line was drawn so clearly that even the hurt couldn't blur it. Thomas must have seen something shift in my eyes because his posture changed, uncertainty creeping in. Shirley, come on. Don't be like that. It's really not a big deal. But it was, and he knew it. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't beg. Instead, I walked to the closet and calmly took out a spare pillow and blanket. What are you doing? He snapped. I didn't answer. I simply walked past him out of our bedroom, down the hall, and into the spare room, the cluttered dump of an extra space we'd always said we'd clean next weekend. The stale air and lumpy couch felt like a punishment, but not one inflicted on me, one I was reclaiming as a boundary. I spread the blanket, placed the pillow, and closed the door behind me. The click of the door was soft, barely a sound, but it felt like the lock on something much larger, something inside me that would never open the same way again. I lay awake the entire night staring at the textured ceiling, replaying that one sentence over and over until it lost its meaning and gained a new one. We're not married. I can do what I want. Fine. If those were the rules he lived by, then they were the rules I would remember. Rules have a way of circling back, and Thomas Clark had no idea how quiet I could fight. The spare room was cold, the kind of cold that crept into your bones instead of your skin. I didn't sleep, not even for a moment. I watched the city lights flicker across the ceiling, listening to the rise and fall of Thomas's footsteps in the hallway, the occasional frustrated sigh, the rustle of bed sheets from the room we used to share. I expected anger to hollow me out, but what settled instead was something cleaner, clearer, an unshakable certainty that whatever we'd been trying to salvage had already died before I even walked out of that bedroom. His words the night before hadn't just cracked something in us, they had snapped it clean in half. By morning, I no longer felt shattered, I felt sharpened. When Thomas finally left the apartment for work, a slammed door punctuating his indignation, I stood in the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face until my reflection steadied. The silence of the apartment wasn't peaceful, it was expectant like the pause before a storm. I dressed, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside without leaving him a note. He didn't deserve one. I hadn't asked for this battle, but he'd drawn first blood. At a cafe across town, I ordered a black coffee and opened my laptop. The first step felt surreal mechanical, like I was following instructions someone else had written. I downloaded Tinder, then Hinge, then Bumble. The icons materialized in a neat row on the screen like little detonators, each one a quiet declaration of independence. A strange calm settled in me as I created my profiles. I even used a picture Thomas had taken months ago of me standing on a cliff at sunrise, my smile effortless, unguarded. I wondered if he would recognize that expression now, if he ever truly had. The moment I hit create account, something inside me unlatched. Not joy, not revenge, just release. If Thomas wanted to live by the rule of technicalities, then I could master them far better than he ever had. Matches came quickly. Super likes messages, comments about my smile or my photo or my bio. It wasn't validation I was looking for, but the attention felt like air after being underwater too long. Then there was Liam Porter. His profile didn't try too hard. A candid photo of him laughing at something off camera. Another of him covered in paint from some kind of volunteer mural project. His bio simply read architect, amateur cook, and owner of 2 left feet. I swear I'm fun, though. The simplicity of it made me smile. I swiped right. We matched instantly. Our first messages were unexpectedly easy. No posturing, no games, just real conversation, dry humor, shared observations, small details that felt intimate without being heavy. He didn't ask why I was on the app, but somehow his presence made me want to volunteer the truth. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from him in a dim cocktail bar with warm lighting and brick walls that seemed to absorb the noise around us. He was even more striking in person, not the flashy, showy kind of attractive Thomas always relied on, but grounded, steady, with eyes that made you feel like the only person in the room. So he'd said with a soft smirk swirling his drink, "The mandatory first date question. What brings you to the wild jungle of online dating?" I could have lied, I could have deflected, but he didn't ask like he wanted gossip. He asked like he genuinely wanted to understand. I was in a relationship, I told him, my voice surprisingly steady. I thought it was exclusive. My boyfriend recently let me know he disagreed, on a technicality. "Oof," Liam said, sympathy flickering across his face. "That sounds brutal." It was, I admitted, but also clarifying. The words settled between us, like a small truth neither of us needed to unpack further. We talked for 2 hours about our jobs, our families, the silly things that made us laugh when we were kids. It felt natural in a way I hadn't felt in months. When we left the bar, he walked me to my car but didn't try to kiss me. He smiled instead. "I hope I make it to the cookie baking stage someday," he teased gently. I laughed an honest laugh, the kind that doesn't sound borrowed or forced. "We'll see," I told him. "Your interview is going well so far." When I returned to the apartment, the lights were off, except for a single lamp Thomas had left on a sad attempt at normalcy. There was a note on the kitchen counter in his sharp, impatient handwriting. "We need to talk. You can't just ignore me. This is childish." I read it once and tossed it into the trash without hesitation. Ignoring wasn't childish when the alternative was engaging with someone who had already shown you exactly how little your relationship meant to him. Silence wasn't a weapon, it was a boundary. Over the next week, our home morphed into a study in emotional physics. Two celestial bodies drifting in separate orbits, occasionally crossing paths but never touching. Thomas attempted every tactic in his limited arsenal to provoke me. He slammed cabinets side, theatrically muttered insults, just loud enough for me to hear. One evening, while I was reading on the couch, he stood at the kitchen doorway and announced loudly to no one in particular, "It's so immature to give someone the silent treatment." I turned a page of my book calm as still water. What he didn't understand, what he never understood, was that I wasn't withholding anything from him. There was simply nothing left to give. Meanwhile, Liam and I kept talking. Our messages became a private universe, warm, steady, uncomplicated. When the world around me felt brittle and cold, he was a reminder that connection could be kind instead of cruel. Our third date was at the art museum. We were standing in front of a massive abstract painting, the kind that looked like someone had taken every emotion they'd ever felt and thrown it onto one canvas. I made a joke, comparing it to the disaster that was my spice rack. He laughed and leaned closer without thinking, and I felt a soft warmth bloom in the center of my chest when his hand brushed mine. We weren't doing anything wrong, but the moment still felt like a small rebellion against the woman. I used to be the one who had tolerated too much for too long. That was the exact moment one of Thomas's friends walked past us. I didn't look away. I didn't step back. Let her see. Let him know. Let the rules he clung to finally turn on him. By the time I got home, I could feel the storm vibrating behind the apartment door. I stepped inside, switched on the kitchen light, and Thomas appeared in the doorway like he'd been waiting there for hours. His eyes were wild, his voice raw. "Where were you?" he demanded. I set down my purse, poured myself a glass of water, and let the silence answer him. "Sarah saw you," he continued, voice rising. "At the museum, with some guy. Who is he?" I turned to face him, calm as a surgeon. "I was at the museum," I said simply. His face twisted a mask of betrayed hypocrisy. "You're cheating on me." I let the question hang, then answered with the cold truth he had carved into stone. "We're not married, Thomas. I can do what I want." His world cracked exactly the way he once wanted mine to. And for the first time I saw fear in his eyes, not anger, not ego. Fear. The realization that the rules he'd created were now the very ones setting me free. Thomas stared at me as if the floor had dropped out beneath him. His breath hitched, his face reddened, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely afraid, not of losing me, but of losing control. He had spent so long treating our relationship like a safety net that he never once imagined I might step away from it. His voice cracked in a way that wasn't dramatic, wasn't calculated, just startled. "Shirley, don't do this. Don't twist this around. You know it's different." "Different." I leaned back against the counter, folding my arms, as his panic started to unravel in real time. "Explain it to me." He opened his mouth closed, it tried again. I wasn't what I was doing, wasn't serious. It was just ego stuff. I wasn't planning anything with anyone. "So it only counts if you get caught with your shoes on their floor?" I asked quietly. He flinched like I'd slapped him, and for a moment the entire kitchen warped with the tension. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the blinking light on the microwave, the overhead bulb casting shadows. Everything felt like it was holding its breath. "It's not the same," he insisted, voice rising again. "You're actually going out with someone. You're actually God. I don't know connecting. That's real. And yours wasn't, I asked. Mine is pathetic. Yours is spiritual romance." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now a creature trapped inside the consequences he built with his own hands. "You don't understand," he hissed. "It was just swipes, stupid matches, just to see what was out there. Everyone does it." "No," I said gently, "everyone doesn't." His head jerked toward me. "But you do," I finished. For a moment he fell completely silent, and I could almost see the exact second a truth pierced through him. The truth that I wasn't yelling, wasn't crying, wasn't trying to negotiate. I was simply done. That terrified him more than any thrown insult or slammed door ever could. In the days that followed, the apartment became a psychological experiment in collapse. Thomas started trying to make noise just to disrupt the quiet, slamming cabinets, leaving drawers open, dropping things, pacing loudly in the hallway. I realized quickly that the noise wasn't about anger, it was about fear. He wanted me to react because reacting would mean I still cared in the way he'd banked on. But I had become a still lake reflecting everything he threw at me back at him with perfect clarity. His texts multiplied, first the pleading kind. Surely, we can talk about this. I'll delete the apps, I swear, please. Then the bargaining kind. Don't throw away everything we built. It was a stupid mistake. Everyone has stupid moments. Then the venom. So what, you think you're special now? You matched with some discount therapist and suddenly you're above me, you're embarrassing. Then the guilt. I'm falling apart and you don't care. How heartless can you be? Each message read like an emotional weather report from someone in a spiral, and I watched it all from a distance. So detached, it startled even me. Not because I was cold, but because I had finally stepped outside the cycle. I knew each stage of his reaction before he did. Denial, anger, bargaining, collapse. And now he was entering the collapse phase so quickly, it was like watching a time-lapse video of a building losing all structural support. He stopped going out. He stopped shaving. He stopped pretending. His eyes were red most mornings when I saw him, and once I heard him crying in the shower. The sound didn't break my heart. It confirmed everything I needed to know. He wasn't grieving me. He was grieving the loss of the person who made his life too easy. Meanwhile, Liam's presence in my life grew quietly but steadily. We didn't talk every hour. We didn't force anything. But his messages had a kind of warmth that seeped into the cracks Thomas had left behind. Small things, photos of a new building he was designing. A voice note laughing at a joke he'd told his coworkers, a picture of his dog wearing a ridiculous holiday sweater. Easy, gentle, real. A week after the museum, Liam suggested a walk through the botanical gardens. The air was crisp, the leaves turning gold and amber, the kind of scenery that makes everything feel intentional. As we walked, his hand brushed mine, not by accident, and I let my fingers curl around his. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks. It was simply right. But that moment, that warmth, made the collapse waiting for me at home feel even colder. That night, Thomas intercepted me in the hallway as I came in. He was pale, disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like someone who hadn't eaten a real meal in days. He stood between me and the bathroom like a bouncer guarding his last piece of dignity. "Where were you?" he asked again, the same question he'd asked the night. Everything broke, but this time softer, like the words were made of glass. "Out," I replied. "With him," he whispered. The silence between us answered before I could. Thomas swallowed hard. "Do you love him?" I didn't hesitate because hesitation would have been cruel. No. Something flickered in his expression, hope maybe, but it extinguished when I added, "But I could. And that scares you more than anything I've done." He closed his eyes, a single tear falling, even though he tried to hide it. "Surely. I was stupid. I was trying to feel wanted. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think I'd lose you." "You didn't lose me because you used Tinder," I said quietly. "You lost me because you defended it." He shook his head violently, like trying to rattle the truth loose. "We can fix this," he insisted. "We just need to talk. Really talk. Please. I know I hurt you, but I can change." I stepped around him, my voice steady. "You had a year to show me who you are, and you did." "But you're replacing me," he said, voice cracking. "Just like that." "No," I replied. "I'm moving on. That's different." Over the next few days, Thomas's behavior became increasingly desperate. Flowers left on my car windshield. Long apologies, handwritten on scraps of notebook paper. Voicemails that started calm but dissolved into panicked sobs. He had swung from denial to bargaining to devastation. And now he was teetering on the edge of something darker, the realization that consequences were finally real. And then came the moment that sealed everything. The moment he saw Liam. A Saturday afternoon. I was carrying a box of donated clothes to my car. Liam had come to help, nothing romantic, nothing dramatic, just kindness. He lifted the heavier box with ease and flashed me a small smile, the kind that made the world slow down. Thomas walked outside at that exact moment. He stopped in the middle of the parking lot as if the ground had turned to cement beneath him. The look on his face was not anger or jealousy, it was recognition. Recognition that he had been replaced not by a rebound, not by a distraction, but by the possibility of a life he could never have offered me. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Is this him?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. Thomas didn't move at first. He stood there in the parking lot, frozen in the late afternoon light, staring at Liam like the sight of him had knocked the wind out of his chest. His jaw tightened, loosened, tightened again, as if he was trying to bite back every emotion flooding through him at once. The silence between the three of us stretched painfully thin, an invisible thread that felt like it could snap with the slightest touch. The man who once swaggered through our apartment with careless confidence now looked small, unanchored, and terrified. Liam shifted the box in his arms and gave a polite nod, one that held no arrogance, no challenge, just quiet respect. He wasn't there to stake a claim or escalate anything. He was simply helping me move forward in the most literal way possible. But the ease with which he stood beside me was enough to send a visible tremor through Thomas. It was the first time he'd ever seen another man stand where he used to, not touching me, not claiming me, just existing comfortably in the space Thomas no longer belonged. "Surely," Thomas said finally, his voice cracking around the edges. "Can we talk, please?" His eyes darted between me and Liam, swelling with panic and a touch of disbelief, as if he still couldn't accept that this was happening, that I was really leaving. "I'll take this to your car," Liam said quietly to me. He didn't touch me, didn't linger. He simply carried the box to my trunk with calm efficiency. He was giving me space, not ownership, and that distinction mattered more than Thomas understood. I faced Thomas, and for the first time since this unraveling began, I didn't feel anger or hurt or even triumph. I felt distance, a clean, almost surgical separation from the life we'd built and the illusions I'd clung to. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, my voice more steady than I felt. Thomas swallowed hard. "Not here." He gestured vaguely toward the building, the implication hanging heavy in the air. "The last conversation, the last plea, the last chance to rewrite a story already finished." I nodded once. 5 minutes, I said. No more. Inside the apartment looked like the aftermath of an emotional hurricane. The living room was a museum of two people trying to coexist while falling apart. Half-packed boxes, an abandoned mug with dried coffee at the bottom, a throw blanket crumpled where Thomas had probably paced or curled up or broken down. The air was stale thick with the residue of sleepless nights and unspoken words. Thomas stood in the center of the room, wringing his hands, like he couldn't figure out where they were supposed to rest. Surely he started, but his voice faltered. He tried again. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I was stupid and selfish, and I didn't realize what I had. But what you're doing, this isn't you." "That is the problem," I said gently. "You keep telling me who I am, who I should be, who I'm supposed to be for you." His face twisted, defensive yet desperate. "I'm not trying to control you." "No," I agreed. "You're trying to contain me. There's a difference." He stepped closer. "Shirley, please, don't leave. I can change. I'll delete everything. I'll go to therapy. God, I don't know. I'll do anything you want. Just don't walk away like this." His words spilled out like someone who had only now recognized the value of something they'd treated carelessly. But they weren't landing the way he hoped. They were late. So painfully late. I shook my head. "Thomas, the apps weren't the betrayal. The betrayal was the moment you looked at me and said you didn't have to respect our relationship because we weren't married. You made our love a loophole. That's what broke me." "I didn't mean it," he whispered. "You meant it enough to say it," I replied. "And that's enough for me." He sank onto the coffee table, hands covering his face. His shoulders shook, silent, exhausted, broken sobs. I watched him cry the way I had cried alone in that spare room while he slept peacefully in our bed. And the strangest thing happened. I felt nothing. Not cruelty, not joy, not guilt, just empty space. He lifted his head. His eyes were red raw, pleading. "You're letting him replace me after 1 month, after everything we had." I sat across from him. "No one replaced you," I said softly. "I outgrew you, and he happens to be standing in the space you left." The truth hit him like a physical blow. His voice cracked again. "Surely don't go. I'll be better. I'll prove it. Please just give me one more chance." I exhaled slowly. "Thomas, you're not fighting for me. You're fighting for the version of me who tolerated things I shouldn't have. That version is gone." His face crumpled, his chest heaving with the effort of holding himself together. "I can't do this," he whispered. "I can't watch you walk out with someone else." "You don't have to watch," I said quietly. "You only need to accept." He shook his head, tears spilling again. "I'll change," he insisted. "Your mistake," I said, stopping him gently, "was showing me who you were the moment you got caught. My mistake was pretending you were someone else for too long." He dropped his gaze, defeated. I stood. I'm finishing the move. When I opened the front door, Liam was waiting by his car, leaning casually against it, the late sunlight drawing warm lines along his jaw. He straightened when he saw my face, not concerned, not intrusive, just present. Thomas appeared behind me, voice hoarse. "Shirley, please don't do this." I turned to him one last time. "You wanted freedom," I said. "This is what it looks like." His face contorted with anguish, But there were no more appeals, no more speeches. He had run out of words, and I had run out of reasons to listen. I stepped out into the fading light. Liam opened the passenger door for me, but I shook my head. "One more box," I said. We carried the last pieces of my old life down together quietly, deliberately, with a shared understanding that this wasn't a new romance sweeping me away. It was something simpler and far more important, a beginning. When we shut the trunk, Thomas stood in the doorway of the apartment building, a silhouette against the dim interior light. I could see the moment the finality hit him, the realization that consequences don't disappear just because you don't like them. He opened his mouth to speak. I closed the car door instead. The sound echoed like a full stop at the end of a long chapter. The drive to my new apartment was quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that settles over you when a whole era ends behind you and a new one begins just beyond the windshield. The city streets rolled by, in soft blurs of amber streetlights and late afternoon shadows. Liam didn't ask questions, didn't pry, didn't fill the silence with forced reassurance. He simply kept the music low and the car steady, letting me breathe out a version of myself I had been holding on to for too long. When we reached the building, he parked and turned off the engine. His eyes flicked to me, steady and patient. "You want help carrying everything up?" he asked. "Only if you don't mind," I said. He smiled gently. "If I minded, I wouldn't be here." Inside the new apartment, the air was still and slightly dusty, like a blank page waiting for ink. The place wasn't fancy, just a small one-bedroom with wide windows and hardwood floors that needed polishing. But it was mine. No shared closet, no competing toothbrushes, no silent tally of who had asked for what or who had failed whom. Just space. Open, unscripted, unclaimed space. Liam set the last box down in the living room and wiped his palms on his jeans. "Want me to help you unpack?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I think this part I need to do alone." He nodded without hesitation. That's what I liked about him. He never tried to insert himself into places I hadn't invited him. He simply met me where I was and didn't demand I move faster than I was ready. Before leaving, he paused at the doorway. "Surely," he said quietly, "just take your time. Whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you want. I'm here, but you don't owe me anything." It was the opposite of everything Thomas had ever shown me. Thomas had demanded attention, demanded forgiveness, demanded assurance, demanded I shrink to make room for the fragile versions of himself he was unwilling to confront. Liam didn't demand anything. He offered. And that difference settled somewhere deep in my chest. After he left, I stood alone in the center of the living room, surrounded by boxes that felt like artifacts of a past life. I unpacked slowly, clothes first, then books, then the little things that made a space feel like home. A candle I loved, a framed photo of the ocean, a ceramic mug my mother gave me when I moved into my first apartment years ago, back when my biggest heartbreak had been a college boyfriend who forgot my birthday. Hours passed without me noticing. When I finally stopped, the apartment was still half unpacked, but it no longer felt like a stranger's space. It felt like a beginning. Only then did my phone buzz. "Thomas." I let it vibrate twice before picking it up, not answering, just looking. "Can we talk one last time, please?" The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who once insisted that our relationship didn't require boundaries now begged for one more conversation. For closure he never offered me. For a voice he no longer deserved to hear. But closure isn't something someone else gives you. Closure is something you decide. I typed back one line. "I'll come by tomorrow at noon. 10 minutes. Nothing more." His reply came instantly. "Thank you." The next day I returned to the apartment we once shared. The building felt strange now, smaller somehow, heavy with air I no longer wanted to breathe. When I opened the door, Thomas was sitting on the couch with his shoulders hunched forward as if bracing for impact. He looked thinner, paler, like the weight of the past few weeks had drained him from the inside out. He stood when he saw me. "Shirley," he said softly, "you look different." "I feel different," I replied. He tried to smile, but it faltered quickly. I just needed to say this face to face. "I'm sorry for everything, for the apps, for the excuses, for treating you like something I could pick up or put down whenever I wanted. You didn't deserve any of that. You didn't deserve me at my worst." His voice cracked. "I thought losing you would hurt, but I didn't realize it would feel like losing oxygen." I didn't move. "I'm not here to make you feel better," I said gently, "or to soften this for you." He nodded, wiping at his eyes. "I know. I needed you to know that I'm going to get help. For real. Not because I think it'll get you back, but because I don't want to be the man who hurt you." A strange quiet ache rose in my chest. Not for him, but for the version of me who had spent so long hoping he would one day say those words. But that version of me was gone, replaced by a woman who finally understood her worth. I hope you do, I said. For yourself, not for me. He took a shaky breath. Do you love him? He asked. I answered the same way I had the night everything broke. Not yet. He winced. But I like who I am with him. I continued, and that's something I haven't felt in a long time. He lowered his gaze. I guess that's my answer. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not cruel. It was simply the end. I turned toward the door. Surely, he said softly. I paused. I hope he treats you the way I should have. I nodded. I hope so too. Then I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me. The latch clicked into place, echoing down the hallway like the soft punctuation on the end of a story that had taken far too long to finish. When I reached the street, the sun was warm, the air crisp, and Liam was leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, wearing an expression that was equal parts cautious and hopeful. You okay? He asked. I looked at him, at the open sky above us, at the street that stretched forward instead of backward. And for the first time since everything began, the answer came easily. I'm getting there. He smiled gently. Then we'll go at your pace. As we drove away, the building and everything inside it grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely.